Hey guys, this is Neil, back with some more overlooked, forgotten, and nuanced ASL rules. If you have any that you'd like to see that you forget while you're playing, post them in the comments below. Until then, let's roll them bones. Let's take a look at number 16, bypass movement and line of sight. In this example, we have this Russian counter-exhausted unit who needs to get to this hex for whatever reason. Therefore, he only has 4 movement factors. He can't go through the smoke. He won't be able to get there. So he has to bypass this hex. And the route he's going to take is going to be like this. He's going to bypass these 2 hex sides. Now, as he does this, this German unit can attempt to take a shot at the Russian bypassing. Now let me move these to the side. You can see that the German has 2 choices here. He can take a shot at one of these 3 vertices because the Russian unit bypassed these 2 hex sides, or, and this is the forgotten part, he can actually target the center dot of that hex. The nuanced part of this is if he fires at the center dot, his line of sight must cross one of the 2 hex sides that were bypassed by the Russian unit. As I draw the line of sights here, you can see that the right choice is shooting at the center dot. He has no line of sight to any of these 3 vertices, but he just barely has a line of sight to the center dot. It does cross one of the hex sides that was being bypassed. Thus, he could take a shot at this unit bypassing here. First fire non-assault movement would apply if he picked the center dot at that unit and bypass. Number 17, leader loss morale checks and task checks. Here we have Lieutenant Hopkinson and his squad taking a nice Sunday stroll through the woods when suddenly Lieutenant von Brock unloads on him with a medium machine gun and a squad and happens to get a KIA, and Lieutenant Hopkinson, his day is over and he is KIA'd. At this point, the squad needs to take a leader loss morale check because they lost Lieutenant Hopkinson. But did you know or remember that when you lose a leader and the squads need to take a leader loss morale check, you reverse the leadership modifier to their check. So this -1 becomes a +1 morale check for this squad or any other unit stacked with Hopkinson. This flipping of the leadership modifier also applies to leader loss task checks. Number 18. Ambush diaro modifiers apply to all units in the group. Here we have a German group with a bunch of status markers and a Russian group with a hero. The ambush diaro modifiers for the Germans is +1 for pinned. Because he's pinned, he does not get his -2 leadership modifier. +1 for this CX unit and +1 for this lax inexperienced unit. On the Russian side, we have 0 here, 0 here, and -1 for the hero. So you can see the Russians have a cumulative -1, and the Germans have a cumulative +3 diaro modifier to the ambush die roll. So even though the Russians only have this hero, his -1 modifier applies to the entire ambush group. The Russians clearly have the upper hand in this close combat potential ambush, even though there's Lieutenant von Brock, a 9-2 leader there. Number 19, attacks versus prisoners. Here we have some Americans and a German squad holding a squad of captured American prisoners. If the Americans were to fire into this hex with the Germans, the attack would also be carried out on the prisoners that are being guarded by the German squad and whatever effect that may have. But did you know that if a sniper happens to land, American sniper happens to land on that hex, the prisoners are not a valid target. It will instead attack any German units that are in that location or hex. In this case, the single German squad. Number 20, deployment off board. Let's pretend these units are just off board and they are about to move on. Up to 10% of them can freely deploy, fractions rounded up. But there's another option. Any units stacked with a leader may attempt to deploy using the normal process of passing a task check. So during setup, prior to moving on, you have two options. Freely deploy 10%, fractions rounded up, and attempt to deploy any unit stacked with a leader. That's why it's always good to stack as many units with a leader off board if you're planning to deploy, and then moving them on and spreading them out after that.